The holographic display flickered to life across every station, ship, and planet in the known galaxy. Hien-Wu sat in his quarters on Concordia Prime, reviewing trade agreements, when the emergency broadcast interrupted his work. The symbol of the Valthorn Empire filled his screen, a crimson star wrapped in silver chains. He had seen this symbol many times during diplomatic meetings, but something about this broadcast felt different. The air itself seemed to grow cold. Emperor Vosric appeared, his forearms spread wide in a gesture that might have been welcoming, if not for the cruelty in his eyes. Behind him stretched a massive arena, and Hien-Wu's stomach turned as he realized what he was seeing. Thousands of beings knelt in rows, their hands bound, their faces showing terror and resignation. The camera panned slowly across the crowd, and Hien-Wu recognized species from across the Outer Rim colonies: men, women, children, the young and the old, all waiting. Citizens of the galaxy, Vosric's voice boomed through the translator, smooth and confident. Today you witness the price of rebellion. Today you learn what happens to those who question Valthorn authority. For centuries we have maintained order across 200 star systems. We have brought peace through strength, prosperity through discipline, yet some refuse to understand this simple truth. Hien-Wu wanted to look away, but he forced himself to watch. As Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, he needed to see this. He needed to understand what was happening. First execution began without warning. A pulse of energy, a flash of light, and a being simply ceased to exist. Then another, and another. The executions continued in steady rhythm, mechanical and efficient. The Valthorn had turned death into an assembly line. The broadcast lasted 3 hours. 50,000 lives ended while Hien-Wu sat frozen in his chair. He saw families executed together. He saw children crying for parents who had already died. He saw beings who faced their deaths with dignity, and others who begged for mercy that never came. Near the end of the broadcast, he saw 3 faces he recognized. Human faces, explorers. From Earth, who had been mapping uncharted space in the Outer Rim, they had been scientists, not soldiers. They had carried no weapons. They had simply been in the wrong place when the Valthorn decided to make their brutal example. When the broadcast finally ended, Vosric spoke again. His voice carried no emotion, no regret, no hesitation. Let this be a lesson to all who question Valthorn's supremacy. Order through strength, peace through dominance. The Empire has spoken, and the Empire will be obeyed. The screen went dark. Hien-Wu sat in silence for a long moment, his hands shaking. He had been a diplomat for 15 years. He'd negotiated treaties, resolved disputes, and built bridges between species that had been enemies for generations. He had always believed that words could solve problems, that patience and understanding could overcome any obstacle. But as he stared at the blank screen, he felt something new burning in his chest. Rage, pure. Focused rage. His communication device chimed. Messages were flooding in from Earth, from other human colonies, from his fellow diplomats. Damn! Everyone wanted to know what humanity's response would be. Hien-Wu ignored them all. He stood, straightened his formal diplomatic robes, and walked toward the council chambers. His footsteps echoed in the empty corridors. Most beings were still in their quarters, still processing what they had witnessed. The Galactic Council consisted of 47 member species, each with varying degrees of power and influence. The Valthorn Empire was not officially part of the Council, but their presence loomed over every decision. They had more warships than the next 10 species combined. Their economy controlled critical trade routes. Their technology was advanced beyond what most species could comprehend. For centuries, the Council had managed a delicate balance, offering diplomatic protests when the Valthorn went too far, but never pushing hard enough to provoke real conflict. Hien-Wu reached the council chambers and activated his emergency beacon. By law, any council member could call an emergency session if they witnessed a threat to galactic peace. Within minutes, representatives began arriving, their expressions ranging from sympathetic to annoyed. The Curial ambassador, a being named Tervel, approached Hien-Wu with what appeared to be concern. "Ambassador, perhaps we should discuss this privately before bringing it to the full council," Tervel said quietly. "Emotions are high." We must be careful not to make hasty decisions. 50,000 beings are dead, Hyan-Wu replied, his voice steady, despite the fury coursing through him. 3 of them were humans under my protection. There is nothing to discuss privately. The galaxy needs to see this for what it is. The session began. Hyan-Wu waited as various representatives offered their prepared statements. They condemned the violence. They expressed sympathy for the victims. They called for dialogue and understanding. Every word felt hollow, rehearsed, meaningless. Finally, the council president recognized Hyan-Wu and gave him permission to speak. Hyan-Wu walked to the center of the chamber. Every diplomatic instinct he had developed over 15 years told him to be measured, to be careful, to follow protocol. He ignored all of it. 50,000 beings died today, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The Valthorn Empire murdered them and broadcast their deaths across the galaxy as entertainment. As a warning, as a demonstration of power, we all watched, we all saw. And now we sit here in this chamber offering words. Just words. Sympathy and concern and calls for dialogue, but no action, no consequences, no justice. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. The Kirill ambassador tried to interrupt, but Hyan-Wu continued. Humanity is new to this galaxy. We have been part of this council for only 30 years. We are small. Our military is limited. Our influence is minimal. But we understand something that apparently many of you have forgotten. We understand that some things are worth fighting for. We understand that evil unopposed becomes evil accepted. We understand that silence in the face of atrocity makes us complicit in that atrocity. The chamber fell completely silent. Hyan-Wu looked around at the assembled representatives, meeting as many eyes as he could. I am formally accusing the Valthorn Empire of crimes against sentient life. I am demanding that this council take immediate action. Economic sanctions, military isolation, arrest warrants for those responsible. If this council lacks the courage to act, then let it be known that humanity will not remain silent. We will not forget, and we will seek justice, with or without your support. He turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving shocked silence behind him. His hands were still shaking, but now it was not from rage alone. It was from fear of what? He had just started, and determination to see it through to the end. The message from Earth arrived 6 hours after Hyan-Wu's speech to the Galactic Council. It was brief and direct. The government supported his position completely, but they needed him to understand the reality of their situation. Humanity had 42 warships scattered across 12 star systems. The Valthorn Empire had over 3,000. Earth's military budget for an entire year was less than what the Valthorn spent on a single dreadnought. If this turned into a shooting war, humanity would be erased from the galaxy in a matter of weeks. Hyan-Wu read the message 3 times, then deleted it. He already knew all of this. He had known it when he made his speech. The question was never whether humanity could win a war against the Valthorn Empire. The question was whether humanity could live with themselves if they did nothing. His door chimed. He opened it to find Captain Jiwoo standing in the corridor, still wearing her ship uniform, dust and carbon scoring visible on the fabric. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Behind her stood 2 members of her crew, carrying sealed storage containers. Ambassador Jiwoo said formally, then her expression softened. Hyan-Wu, we need to talk. He let them in. Jiwoo dismissed her crew members to wait outside, but kept the containers. She set them on his desk and activated the security seals. Holographic displays sprang to life, showing data streams, communication intercepts, and surveillance footage. My ship was in the outer rim when the executions happened, Jiwoo explained. We were 3 systems away, conducting a standard exploration survey. When we heard about the massacre, I redirected to the colony site. We got there before the Valthorn cleaned everything up. She pulled up footage showing the colony from orbit. It had been a small settlement, maybe 10,000 inhabitants. Farms, residential domes, a few industrial facilities. Nothing threatening, nothing military. The footage switched to ground level, and Hyan-Wu saw the reality the Valthorn had tried to hide. They weren't rebels, Jiwoo said quietly. They were farmers. Families. The Valthorn came in with overwhelming force and rounded up everyone they could find. No weapons were recovered from the colony, no military installations, no evidence of any organized resistance. According to the Valthorn official story, this was a hotbed of insurrection. According to the actual evidence, it was a peaceful settlement that happened to be in territory the Empire wanted. Hyenwoo studied the data, his jaw clenched. How many colonies did they hit? 47, Jiwoo replied. All in the Outer Rim. All within the same week. They rounded up populations, sorted them, took 50,000 individuals across all the colonies, and executed them as an example. The rest, they relocated to labor camps. Hyenwoo, they're not just maintaining order. They're clearing space for expansion and using terror to prevent resistance. Does the council know this? Jiwoo laughed bitterly. I sent the data to every council member. Most didn't respond. The ones who did thanked me for the information and said they would take it under advisement. Turville actually suggested I delete the evidence for my own safety. They're terrified, Hyenwoo. The Valthorn have them so intimidated that they won't act even with proof of genocide. Hyenwoo stood and paced his quarters. His mind was working through possibilities, calculating odds, searching for some path forward that didn't end with humanity's extinction or humanity's shame. After several minutes, he turned back to Jiwoo. If the council won't act, we will. But we can't do it alone, and we can't do it directly. We need allies, and we need strategy. We have 42 ships, Jiwoo reminded him. The Valthorn have thousands. Which is why we don't fight them, ship to ship. We fight them the way humans have always fought when we're outnumbered and outgunned. We fought that way against each other for thousands of years before we reached the stars. We know how to win wars we should lose. Jiwoo studied him carefully. You're talking about guerrilla warfare? Hit-and-run tactics. Asymmetric engagement. I'm talking about making them bleed for every system they control. I'm talking about making their victory so expensive that it becomes unsustainable. And I'm talking about giving the rest of the galaxy time to find their courage. Hyenwoo pulled up a star chart showing Valthorn territory. But first we issue an ultimatum. We do this properly through diplomatic channels. We give them a chance to back down. They'll never back down, Jiwoo said. You know that. I do. But the rest of the galaxy needs to see that we tried everything else first. They need to see that we exhausted every peaceful option before we started shooting. He drafted a message as he spoke, his fingers moving quickly across the holographic interface. The Valthorn Empire has 30 days to surrender those responsible for the massacre to stand. Trial before an independent tribunal. If they refuse, humanity will consider it a declaration of war. Jiwoo read the message over his shoulder. This is insane. Beautiful, but insane. Earth Command will never approve this. Earth Command gave me full diplomatic authority. This falls within my mandate. He sent the message before he could second-guess himself. It went out through official channels, copied to every member of the Galactic Council, broadcast across public networks, transmitted to the Valthorn Empire directly. The response came faster than Hyenwoo expected. Within 2 hours, High Commander Draxvolume appeared on every major news network, his 3 eyes gleaming with amusement. The interview was clearly staged, designed to humiliate humanity. The humans demand justice. Draxville's laughter was harsh and grating. These primitives who only achieved faster than light travel 30 years ago? These beings who barely control a dozen systems? They threaten the Valthorn Empire. He leaned closer to the camera, his expression shifting from amusement to contempt. Let me be clear. The Empire does not negotiate with insects. The Empire does not answer to species so weak they cannot even defend their own colonies. In 30 days, humanity will learn the same lesson the Outer Rim learned. Obedience through pain. Compliance through fear. The broadcast ended with an announcement. A Valthorn battle group, 12 warships strong, was being dispatched to the human Outer Rim colonies as a show of force. They would arrive in 22 days. The message was clear. Humanity had 3 choices. Back down, prepare to be destroyed, or do something unexpected. Han-Wu watched the broadcast with Gi-Wu standing beside him. When it ended, she turned to him with a grim expression. Well, we got their attention. Now what? Now we contact Admiral Taejung and every ship captain in the human fleet. Now we start planning. And now we show the Valthorn Empire that humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being the strongest or the fastest. We became dominant because we never, ever knew when to quit. His communication device lit up with incoming messages. Some were from Earth Command, demanding explanations. Some were from other council members, warning him to stand down. But a few, just a few, were from smaller species offering quiet support. Not military support, not yet. But information, intelligence, supply routes, the seeds of an alliance. Gu noticed his expression. You're smiling. Why are you smiling? Because they think this is about military power. They think we're going to line up our 42 ships against their 3,000 and fight like civilized species. They have no idea what's coming. What is coming? Han-Wu pulled up tactical displays showing Valthorn supply lines, communication hubs, infrastructure nodes. Chaos, Captain. We're going to bring them chaos. Admiral Taejong looked older than his 53 years, the stress of commanding humanity's entire military fleet during the worst crisis in their brief galactic history had aged him visibly. He stood in the command center of Earth's lunar military base, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of every human vessel in known space. 42 ships. It felt like nothing. The Valthorn battle group will reach our Outer Rim colonies in 18 days, he said to the assembled captains on the video conference. 12 warships, including 2 dreadnoughts. Any one of those dreadnoughts could destroy our entire colonial defense force. If we meet them head-on, we lose. If we run, we abandon 2 million colonists and prove to the galaxy that humanity's threats are empty. Neither option is acceptable. Captain Ji-Woo spoke from her ship. Then we don't meet them head-on, and we don't run. We've been studying Valthorn military doctrine for the past 3 weeks. They fight like they've been fighting for 1,000 years. Formation tactics, overwhelming firepower, systematic advance. They expect their enemies to fight the same way. Which means, another captain asked. Why? Which means we break every rule of galactic warfare they know, Tae-Young replied. We've spent the last 3 weeks reviewing human military history. Every guerrilla campaign, every asymmetric conflict, every time a smaller force defeated a larger one through unconventional tactics. We're going to teach the Valthorans something they've forgotten. Size isn't everything. The plan was simple in concept, terrifyingly difficult in execution. Human ships would not engage the Valthorn fleet directly. Instead, they would strike at the enemy's supply lines, communication relays, and support infrastructure. The Valthorn Empire was vast, but that vastness required constant logistics. Ships needed fuel, food, ammunition, replacement parts. Cut those supply lines. And even the mightiest fleet became vulnerable. Lieutenant Dayun ran tactical analysis from her corvette, the Swift Blade. She was 28 years old and had been in the fleet for only 4 years. Before this crisis, her ship had been assigned to patrol routes and escort duties. Nothing exciting. Nothing dangerous. Now she was being asked to attack military targets that outmassed her vessel by factors of hundreds. Target confirmed, her sensor officer reported. Valthorn Supply Depot, Sector 12. 3 cargo vessels docked, minimal military presence. Do-Yoon studied the tactical display. The depot was in Valthorn territory, 40 light-years from the nearest human colony. Getting there had required 3 days of careful navigation through unmapped space. Leaving would require even more care. One mistake, one unlucky sensor sweep, and they would be trapped. All hands to battle stations, she ordered. Weapons hot, engines ready for emergency jump. We go in fast, hit hard, and get out before they know what happened. The Swift Blade dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, already accelerating. They crossed the distance to the depot in 17 minutes, their weapons charging the entire way. The Valthorn guards barely had time to register the incoming threat before human missiles struck the cargo vessels. Fuel ignited. Ammunition detonated. The depot transformed into an expanding fireball. "Jump now," Dayun commanded. The swift blade vanished back into faster-than-light travel before the Valthorn could scramble a response. Similar attacks happened across Valthorn space. Human ships appeared, struck, and vanished like ghosts. Communication relays went dark. Automated mining stations stopped responding. Transport convoys disappeared without distress signals. The Valthorn military had never faced this kind of warfare. They sent investigation teams, but by the time those teams arrived, the human ships were hundreds of light years away. The Valthorn responded with fury. They dispatched hunting packs, groups of fast warships designed to track and destroy the human raiders. But hunting packs required coordination and human intelligence officers. Aided by sympathetic aliens who secretly opposed Valthorn rule, fed Earth precise information about enemy movements. Human ships knew where the hunting packs were before the hunting packs knew where to hunt. In Sector 19, a hunting pack commanded by Valthorn Captain Krelvax found a human destroyer, apparently conducting repairs near a dead moon. It seemed like easy prey. The hunting pack moved in for the kill, only to discover too late that the destroyer's distress was a lure. 3 human corvettes dropped out of faster-than-light travel behind the Valthorn ships, and the trap closed. The battle lasted 8 minutes. 2 Valthorn ships were destroyed, 1 was crippled, and the rest scattered in confusion. The human ships disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. Admiral Tiang studied the battle reports with grim satisfaction. Humanity was losing ships too, and every loss hurt. But they were taking a toll on the Valthorn that shocked the galaxy. For every human vessel destroyed, 2 or 3 Valthorn ships were damaged or eliminated. The mathematics of attrition were slowly shifting. Meanwhile, Hue worked the political arena from Concordia Prime. He leaked the evidence. Hue had gathered 2 independent news networks. He gave interviews explaining humanity's position. He met quietly with representatives from smaller species. Building a coalition of the willing, or at least the sympathetic, public opinion across the galaxy began to shift. At first, most species saw humanity's resistance as doomed stupidity. But as weeks passed and human ships continued to fight, that perception changed. News broadcasts showed human crews defending their colonies. They showed the evidence of Valthorn atrocities. They showed interviews with refugees from the Outer Rim. Beings who had lost everything to Valthorn expansion. Protests erupted on neutral worlds. University students held demonstrations demanding the Galactic Council take action. Trade unions refused to load Valthorn cargo. Artists created works depicting human resistance. The narrative was changing from foolish humans picking a fight to brave humans standing against tyranny. But the Valthorn Empire was far from defeated. After 4 weeks of harassment, they adapted. They reinforced their supply lines. They improved their coordination. They accepted that humanity would not fight a conventional war, began developing countermeasures, and they prepared their promised retaliation. Emperor Vosric appeared in another galactic broadcast, his expression cold and determined. The human species has made their choice. They have chosen war over wisdom, destruction over diplomacy. Very well, we will provide them with war. The human colony of New Busan will serve as an example of what happens to those who defy Valthorn authority. In 7 days, that colony will cease to exist. New Busan was home to 2 million humans. It was the largest human settlement outside Earth's solar system. Factories, farms, research facilities, families, an entire community that had been built over 3 decades of hard work. Admiral Descend received the news while his fleet was scattered across a dozen systems, harassing Valthorn positions. He had perhaps 14 ships he could redirect to New Busan in time. 14 ships against the 28 warships the Valthorn were sending. He sent a message to Governor Minji, as the leader of New Busan, begin evacuation procedures. We'll hold them off as long as possible, but you need to get your people out. A response came to hours later. Minji appeared on the video link, her expression calm despite the death sentence hanging over her colony. Admiral, with respect, No. If we evacuate, we prove that the Valthorn can make us run. We prove that their terror works. My people voted. 83% want to stay and fight? We're not running. Governor, this isn't about courage. It's about survival. We can rebuild elsewhere. Can we rebuild our dignity, Admiral? Can we rebuild our self-respect? My people didn't come to New Busan to run at the first sign of trouble. We came here to build something permanent. We're not leaving. Taeyang wanted to argue, but he understood her position. He had felt the same way when he joined the fleet. Some things mattered more than safety. And we'll come to you, Governor. Every ship we have, we'll make them pay for every meter. Lieutenant Dayun received her orders 12 hours later. The Swift Blade and 13 other vessels were to proceed to New Busan immediately. They would arrive 2 days before the Valthorn fleet. It would give them time to prepare defenses, to organize the colonists, to plan one last desperate stand. As the Swift Blade jumped toward New Busan, Dayun studied the tactical situation. 14 ships against 28. 2 million civilians counting on them. The odds were terrible, but her weapons officer, a young man named Sang-woo, looked at her and smiled. We'll make it work, Lieutenant. Humans always do. Dayun hoped he was right. She hoped that humanity's stubborn refusal to quit would be enough, because in 6 days, they would find out if courage could overcome impossible odds. The Valthorn Armada arrived at New Busan, exactly on schedule. 28 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. Their formations perfect, their approach methodical. High Commander Draxvalum commanded from the flagship Inevitable, a massive dreadnought that massed more than the entire human defensive fleet combined. He had expected to find the colony abandoned, or perhaps defended by a token force. What he found instead surprised him. 14 human ships waited in orbit around New Busan, positioned in a defensive sphere. On the planet's surface, energy readings showed active weapon emplacements, shield generators. In what appeared to be a fully mobilized civilian defense force, the humans were not running. They were preparing to fight. Draxvalum opened a communication channel. Human vessels, this is High Commander Draxvalum of the Valthorn Empire. You are outnumbered 2 to 1. Your position is hopeless. Withdraw now, and we will limit our retaliation to the colony. Remain, and you will be destroyed along with it. Admiral Tae-yong, commanding from the destroyer Defiant Hope, responded immediately. Commander, this is Admiral Tae-yong of Earth. We're not going anywhere. If you want this colony, you'll have to go through us first. So be it. The blood of your people is on your hands. The Valthorn fleet advanced. They moved slowly, confidently, like a predator that knows its prey cannot escape. Their weapons charged, their shields powered up. They had fought hundreds of battles across their long history. This would be no different. They were wrong. The battle began at extreme range. Human ships opened fire first, their missiles streaking across the void. The Valthorn shields absorbed the impacts easily, and Draxvalum smiled. These humans fought with desperation but no discipline. Then the second wave of missiles arrived, and the third, and he realized the truth. The humans weren't trying to break through the shields. They were creating a debris field, filling space with shrapnel and electronic interference. All ships advanced through the debris cloud. Maintain formation, Draxvalum ordered. As the Valthorn fleet pushed through, human ships struck from unexpected angles. They had been hiding in the debris, using the chaos to mask their positions. Lieutenant Dayun's corvette, the Swift Blade, accelerated to maximum speed and raked her weapons across a Valthorn cruiser's flank. The cruiser's shields held, but the attack forced it to break formation. Across the battlefield, similar engagements erupted. Human ships refused to fight the way the Valthorn expected. They didn't maintain lines. They didn't exchange fire at respectful distances. They darted in and out like angry insects, hitting weak points, exploiting gaps. Forcing the Valthorn to split their attention, Captain Ji-woo commanded the destroyer's steadfast horizon. And she had studied the Valthorn shield technology for weeks. Their shields were powerful, but had a specific weakness. They generated a harmonic frequency that could be disrupted.
Yes.
If you hit them at precisely the right angle with precisely the right timing, It required getting dangerously close and exposing your ship to return fire. Most species considered the tactic too risky. Giwu didn't care about risk. She cared about results. Helm, bring us in close to that dreadnought. Weapons. Prepare the harmonic disruptor. Her crew looked at her like she was insane, but they followed orders. The steadfast Horizon dove toward the dreadnought inevitable, taking fire from multiple Valthorn ships. Her shields flickered and failed. Hull breaches appeared across 3 decks. But she held her course. Fire. Jiwoo commanded. The harmonic disruptor hit the dreadnought's shields at the perfect angle. For 3 seconds, a gap appeared in the shields. For 3 seconds, the massive warship was vulnerable. Human missiles, already in flight, poured through the gap and struck the hull directly. Explosions rippled across the inevitable's surface, but the dreadnought's return fire caught the steadfast Horizon. The destroyer shuddered under the impact. Engineering reported critical damage. Life support was failing on 2 decks. Giwu knew her ship was dying, but they had proven something crucial. The Valthorn could be hurt. All ships. Did you see that? Taeyong broadcast on the fleet channel. The shields can be disrupted. Coordinate your attacks. Make every shot count. The battle intensified. Human ships took terrible losses, but they made the Valthorn pay for every meter of space. When the destroyer Brave Dawn lost engines and weapons, her captain rammed the crippled vessel into a Valthorn cruiser at full speed. Both ships were destroyed, but the tactic shocked the Valthorn. These humans were fighting like cornered animals, willing to sacrifice everything. On the planet's surface, Governor Minji coordinated the ground defenses. The Valthorn had sent assault shuttles to land troops, expecting quick surrender once they established a foothold. They found instead a population armed and organized. Farmers fought alongside factory workers. Teachers coordinated with engineers. The colony had transformed every building into a potential fortress. Every street into a kill zone. Sang-woo, the weapons officer from the Swift Blade, had requested transfer to a fighter squadron 3 days before the battle. He now piloted a small combat craft, one of 40 that launched from New Bazan's surface to support the orbital defense. The fighters were no match for Valthorn warships in direct combat, but they didn't need to be. They harassed the enemy formation, drew fire away from larger vessels, and exploited every weakness they could find. During the battle's 3rd hour, Sang-woo noticed that the Valthorn flagship had taken damage to its bridge section from GOE's attack. Sensors showed the command deck was exposed to vacuum, protected only by emergency force fields. It was a small target, nearly impossible to hit. But if someone could get a missile through that gap, they could kill the Valthorn commander. He didn't hesitate. Sang-woo broke from his squadron and accelerated toward the inevitable. Valthorn point defense systems tracked him immediately. His fighter took hits. Shields failed. Hull integrity dropped to 30%. His cockpit filled with smoke and alarms, but he kept flying at the last possible moment. Sang-woo fired his remaining missiles directly at the exposed bridge, then ejected from his doomed fighter. The missiles struck true. The bridge exploded. High Commander Draxvalum died without knowing what killed him. The loss of their commander threw the Valthorn fleet into confusion. Their strict military doctrine didn't account for losing leadership mid-battle. Ships stopped coordinating. Some continued the attack. Others began defensive maneuvers. A few broke formation entirely. Admiral Taeyong saw the opportunity and seized it. All ships concentrated fire on the left flank. Break their line. The remaining human vessels, battered and damaged but still fighting, focused their attacks. They punched through the confused Valthorn formation and forced 3 enemy ships to retreat. It wasn't a rout, but it was progress. The battle raged for 6 days. Not continuously, but in waves. The Valthorn would attack, the humans would defend, and both sides would pull back to regroup. Bodies floated in the orbital space around New Busan. Debris fields marked where ships had died. On the planet's surface, entire districts lay in ruins. Governor Minji broadcast a message to her people during a brief lull in the fighting. She stood in the colony's central square, surrounded by rubble and burn marks. Blood stained her clothes. Exhaustion showed in every line of her face. "Okay, people of New Busan, we have held for 6 days. We have paid a terrible price. We have lost friends, family, neighbors. Our homes are damaged. Our streets are scarred. But we are still here. We are still fighting. And we have shown the galaxy that humanity does not break easily. Whatever happens next, know that you have all been heroes. Every single one of you." On the 7th day, something unexpected happened. New ships appeared at the system's edge, but they weren't Valthorn. They bore the markings of the Kirill Federation, a neutral power that had stayed out of galactic conflicts for centuries. 20 Kirill warships dropped into formation alongside the exhausted human fleet. Admiral Taeyang received a communication from the Kirill fleet commander. "Admiral, we have watched your stand with great interest. My government has decided that remaining neutral in the face of such courage would be shameful. We stand with humanity." More ships arrived over the next few hours. Not many, but enough. Species that had stayed silent now found their voices. The Valthorn fleet, already bloodied and disorganized, faced a growing coalition. They retreated, taking their damaged vessels back to Empire space. New Busan had survived, but barely. 50,000 colonists were dead, including Governor Minji, who had died defending a school where children had taken shelter. The orbital defenses were shattered. Only 7 human ships remained combat-capable, but they had held. Against impossible odds, against overwhelming force, they had held. And the galaxy had taken notice. The news of New Busan's survival spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Within days, every species knew the story. Humanity, outnumbered and outgunned, had held their ground against the Valthorn Empire. More importantly, other species had broken centuries of neutrality to stand with them. The unthinkable had happened. The Valthorn had been forced to retreat. Hyanwu watched the coverage from his quarters on Concordia Prime. Images of the battle played on every news channel. Interviews with survivors, analysis from military experts who couldn't explain how the humans had survived, statements from governments that had previously remained silent, now expressing support for humanity's cause. The momentum had shifted, and he knew this was the moment to push forward. He called for another emergency session of the Galactic Council. This time, the chamber was packed. Every member species sent their highest-ranking representative. The gallery overflowed with observers, journalists, and beings who simply wanted to witness history. The air crackled with tension and anticipation. Hyanwu no longer stood alone. Beside him was Admiral Taeyang, still wearing his uniform with scorch marks from the battle. Captain Ji-woo attended via hologram from a medical facility where she was recovering from injuries sustained. When her ship was destroyed, Lieutenant Dayun stood at attention, representing the thousands of human crew members who had fought in the battle. Behind them stood representatives from the Kirill Federation and 6 other species that now openly supported the Coalition for Sentient Rights. As the alliance had been named, the council president called the session to order. Hyanwu stepped forward to speak, and the chamber fell silent. Members of the Galactic Council, 54 days ago, 50,000 beings were murdered by the Valthorn Empire. 54 days ago, I stood in this chamber and demanded justice. Most of you dismissed my demands as impossible. You told me the Valthorn were too powerful to challenge. You advised patience, caution, and acceptance of the status quo. You were wrong. He activated a holographic display showing casualty figures, battle recordings, and economic data. In the past 8 weeks, humanity has proven that the Valthorn Empire is not invincible. We have disrupted their supply lines, destroyed their infrastructure, and demonstrated that their military superiority means nothing against an enemy willing to fight unconventionally. At New Busan, we held against odds of 2 to 1. We forced them to retreat. And we did it not because we are stronger, but because we refused to surrender. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some supportive, some skeptical, all engaged. Hyanwu continued. But this is not about humanity's military achievements. This is about justice. This is about establishing that no species, regardless of their power, is above accountability. I am here today with an updated set of demands. First, immediate economic sanctions against the Valthorn Empire. Second, the freezing of all Valthorn assets in neutral space. Third, the establishment of an independent tribunal to investigate Valthorn war crimes across the past century. And fourth, the formal recognition that the use of terror tactics against civilian populations constitutes a crime against sentient life. The Valthorn representative, a senior diplomat named Corveth who had replaced the deceased Draxvalum in official capacities, rose to object. Before he could speak, alarms began sounding throughout Concordia Prime. Security alerts flashed across every display. 6 Valthorn warships had appeared at the station's perimeter. They were not attacking, but their weapons were charged, and their targeting systems were active. The message was clear. A threat. An assassination attempt against the coalition leadership. Captain Jiwoo, despite her injuries, immediately began issuing orders from her medical bed. The remaining human ships in the system, along with Kirill and other allied vessels, moved to intercept. But they were outnumbered and too far away to arrive in time if the Valthorn decided to fire. Emperor Vosric himself appeared on the communication channels, broadcasting to the entire galaxy. His forearms were spread in a gesture of dominance, his expression cold and cruel. You have pushed too far, humans. You have caused disruption and chaos. You have turned species against us through propaganda and lies. Today, this ends. Your leaders will die, your alliance will crumble, and the galaxy will remember why the Valthorn Empire has ruled for so long. Hyenwu stood calmly in the council chamber, though his heart was racing. He had always known this might happen. Martyrdom had been a possibility from the moment he first challenged the Empire, but he found he wasn't afraid. He had accomplished what he set out to do. The galaxy was no longer silent. What happened next would be discussed and debated for generations. The Swift Blade. Lieutenant Dayun's corvette was the closest human ship to Concordia Prime. It was also heavily damaged from the Battle of New Busan. Operating at perhaps 60% capacity, Dayun received the alert and understood immediately that she couldn't stop 6 Valthorn warships. But she could delay them. She could buy time. All hands, prepare for emergency burn. Divert all power to engines. We're going to position ourselves between those warships and the station. Her crew responded without hesitation. They had already faced death once at New Busan. They could face it again. The Swift Blade accelerated directly toward the Valthorn formation. A single corvette challenging 6 warships, the Valthorn commander ordered them to stand down. Dayun ignored the order. She positioned her tiny vessel directly in the line of fire between the Valthorn fleet and Concordia Prime. She opened a broadcast channel, not just to the Valthorn, but to the entire galaxy. This is Lieutenant Dayun of the human ship Swift Blade. We are one small vessel. We cannot stop you. But if you want to attack the station, you will have to go through us first. You will have to show the galaxy that the mighty Valthorn Empire kills anyone who stands in their way, no matter how small, no matter how defenseless. Go ahead, Emperor. Show everyone what your empire really stands for. The galaxy watched. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds watched one human ship facing impossible odds. Not running. Not surrendering. Simply standing in the way, Emperor Vosric faced an impossible choice. If he destroyed the Swift Blade, he would be seen as a murderer attacking a heroic defender. If he backed down, he would be seen as weak. Either way, he lost. Before he could decide, more ships arrived. Not just the human and Kirill vessels that had been racing to intercept, but ships from a dozen other species. Some were military vessels, some were civilian transports, some were old cargo haulers that probably couldn't fight even if they wanted to. But they all positioned themselves around Concordia Prime, forming a living shield. The message was clear. If the Valthorn wanted to kill the coalition leadership, they would have to kill thousands of civilians from dozens of species. They would have to prove to the galaxy that their rule was based entirely on terror and murder. Vosric stared at the tactical display. seeing his moment of triumph turn into a potential disaster. His military advisors urged him to fire to show strength. His political advisors begged him to withdraw, to avoid the catastrophic loss of credibility. While he hesitated, something happened within Valthorn's space itself. News reports began flooding in. Protests had erupted across multiple Valthorn-controlled worlds. Species that had been subjugated for centuries, inspired by humanity's resistance, were rising up. Labor strikes shut down critical industries. Sabotage disrupted military operations. The very subject species that Vosric had relied on to maintain his empire were no longer cooperating. On the Valthorn homeworld, senior military commanders met in secret. They had watched the debacle at New Busan. They had seen their empire's reputation crumble. They had calculated the cost of continuing this war and found it unsustainable. Within 6 hours, they staged a coup. Emperor Vosric was arrested by his own guards. The military junta that replaced him immediately opened communications with the Galactic Council. They sued for peace, offered to participate in the tribunal, and agreed to economic sanctions in exchange for a cessation of hostilities. The galaxy watched in shock as the 1,000-year Valthorn Empire collapsed. Not from external conquest, but from internal pressure that humanity's resistance had unleashed. 1 year later, Hyunwoo stood on New Busan. The colony had been rebuilt, its scars transformed into memorials. A monument rose in the central square, bearing the names of all who had died defending the colony. Governor Minji's name was at the top, along with the names of thousands of others who had given everything. Admiral Taeyang stood beside him, older and grayer but still proud. Captain Jiwoo had retired from active service but served as an advisor to Earth's diplomatic corps. Lieutenant Dae-yoon had been promoted to captain and commanded a new destroyer named Courage. The tribunal had completed its work. War criminals faced justice. Reparations were being paid. The Valthorn Empire, now led by a coalition government that included representatives from previously subjugated species, was slowly reforming. "We changed the galaxy," Taeyang said quietly. "One human standing up and demanding what was right. That's all it took to start everything." Hyunwoo shook his head. It wasn't one human. It was all of us. Every person who refused to look away. Every crew member who fought at New Busan. Every civilian who stood their ground. Every species that found their courage. We didn't change the galaxy through strength. We changed it by refusing to accept that injustice was inevitable. A group of schoolchildren approached, led by their teacher. They wanted to meet the ambassador who had started everything. Hyunwoo knelt to talk with them, answering their questions with patience and kindness. They asked if he had been scared. He admitted he had been terrified. They asked if he had known they would win. He said he had no idea, but that not knowing the outcome was no excuse for not trying, as the sun set over New Busan, casting long shadows across the rebuilt city. Hyunwoo thought about everything that had happened. Humanity had not won through superior technology or overwhelming force. They had won through something simpler and more powerful. They had won by refusing to quit, by standing up when others stayed silent. And by believing that some principles mattered more than survival, the galaxy had learned a lesson it would not soon forget. Humans were not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the most advanced, but they possessed something unique and dangerous, an absolute, stubborn, beautiful refusal to accept that evil should go unchallenged. They had looked at impossible odds and decided to fight anyway. They had faced certain death and chosen to stand their ground in the end. That had made all the difference. Humanity. Fuck yeah.